Donald Trump's lawyers will begin their defence in a few hours' time in his second impeachment trial following the prosecution's final arguments. The defence will present their case that the former president is not guilty of inciting last month's deadly Capitol Hill riot. Hundreds of thousands of people have been protesting in cities across Myanmar for a seventh day. They're demanding the return of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Russia has said it's ready to break off relations with the EU if the bloc imposes new sanctions over the treatment of President Putin's most prominent opponent, Alexei Navalny. Mr. Navalny is back in court again on Friday. A coronavirus outbreak at a quarantine hotel in Australia has led to a 5-day lockdown being imposed in the state of Victoria. The Australian Open, taking place in Melbourne, will continue without spectators.
Protesters in Myanmar gather outside the Chinese embassy in Yangon to criticize China's failure to denounce the military takeover of the government. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, says his country is prepared to cut ties with the European Union if it punishes Russia over the jailing of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. China bans BBC World News from its television networks in a diplomatic dispute with Britain over broadcasting. And the chief of the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Committee promises to choose a new president after Yoshiro Mori resigned over comments about women.
We begin in Japan with an Olympic controversy. The organizing committee for the Tokyo Games is officially looking for a new president after Mori Yoshiro resigned over his demeaning comments about women.
My inappropriate remarks have caused a lot of confusion. I am tendering my resignation as president of the Tokyo Organizing Committee.
The trouble began last week when the 83-year-old said meetings with women take too long because they talk too much. He later apologized, but that failed to quell the criticism both in Japan and abroad. Hundreds of Olympic volunteers quit in protest. The committee's director general says a 10-member panel will be set up to find a replacement. He says it'll be made up of an equal number of men and women and will include some athletes.
The selection process for Mori's successor needs to be transparent so that we can be accountable.
The president of the International Olympic Committee said in a statement his organization respects Mori's decision and understands his reasons. Thomas Bach added the IOC will continue to work hand in hand with Mori's successor. Tokyo Governor Koike Yuriko says the new president should be a leader who can send a message of diversity and social harmony. Now, for more on the controversy, Newsroom Tokyo's Yoshioka Takuma earlier spoke with our sports correspondent Maruyama Yuki. He's been covering the Olympics since the 2012 London Games.
When this scandal first broke, Mori said he had no intention of resigning. So what's changed?
In a word, pressure. For the past week, Mori has faced non-stop criticism from athletes, sponsors, and the public, both here in Japan and overseas. But I think the breaking point was the shifting tone of the International Olympic Committee. After Mori's initial apology, the IOC said it considered the matter closed and was ready to move on. But most people weren't. I think the IOC realized they needed to take a stronger stance. As a result, they denounced Mori's comments, describing them as absolutely inappropriate and contrary to the Olympic spirit. That put Mori in a tight spot, and if he had stayed on, he could have been a big distraction leading up to and during the Games.
Turning to his successor, we've learned that Mori approached Kawabuchi Saburo, the former chairman of Japan's Pro Soccer League, about taking reins. But after initially showing interest, Kawabuchi now declined the job. So what will happen next?
Well, according to organizing committee rules, the executive board must appoint the president from its members. Some members of the board and the IOC, as well as Japan's public, have questioned the way Mori tried to handpick his successor. At today's meeting, organizers decided to set up a selection committee that includes athletes. So we are expecting an open and transparent selection process. Some board members hope a woman or someone from a younger generation can step into the role.
There's less than 6 months before the games kick off. How will the change of leadership now impact preparations?
It's definitely going to complicate planning. The games have already been postponed once due to the coronavirus, and organizers are still grappling with uncertainty about how to ensure a safe event. Mori played a crucial role as he cultivated a stronger network during his decades in politics. That helped him act as a bridge between Olympic organizers, the government, and other stakeholders. Among all this confusion and growing public apathy toward the Games, time is ticking. The torch relay is set to start next month, and big decisions remain over audiences and overseas visitors.
A panel of experts has given the green light for Japan's health ministry to approve the coronavirus vaccine developed by U.S. firm Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech. The experts met on Friday to assess data from Japan's own vaccine testing, clearing the final hurdle for the health minister to formally approve the rollout as early as Sunday.
The vaccine was found to trigger antibodies at the same level as in Europe and the US. In that sense, we can confirm its effectiveness.
Japan is the last member of the group of 7 industrialized nations to approve the vaccine. Frontline medical workers will be the first to receive shots starting from the middle of next week. Next in line are the elderly, with plans to start vaccinating them in April. They'll be followed by people with underlying health conditions and workers at care facilities for the elderly. The first shipment of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine arrived Friday at Narita Airport near Tokyo from Belgium. Pfizer has a contract to supply Japan with enough doses for 72 million people. But a recent poll conducted by NHK shows almost 30% of respondents do not want the jabs. Data from clinical trials and vaccination drives outside Japan show there have been rare cases of severe allergic reactions. Ministry officials plan to monitor about 10,000 medical workers who will be vaccinated first for any side effects. Now, Japan's tally of new coronavirus cases stood at 1,300 on Friday, a drop of almost 400 from the previous day. But officials say the capacity of hospital beds remains under pressure. Moving now to the latest developments on Myanmar's military takeover. Trati Rakosan at our bureau in Bangkok has the details.
Myanmar's military has pardoned thousands of prisoners while anti-coup protests continue to grow in the country. It began releasing the inmates on Friday after the amnesty was announced on state-run TV. The military says more than 23,000 inmates will be freed so that they can participate in building the nation. An executive member of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy says the move is aimed at obstructing the protests.
There are some people who support the military. Those people are currently in jail. So the military wants to release them so that they will start trouble among the pro-democracy protesters.
Demonstrations against the military takeover are continuing in cities across the country. In the capital, Naypyidaw, supporters of Aung San Suu Kyi took to the streets in defiance of a ban on gatherings of 5 or more people. They called for her release and a return to democracy. In the southern city of Malamyine, Reuters reported police fired rubber bullets to break up a crowd of protesters, injuring several people. Senior General Min Aung Hlaing is urging people to go back to work and stop gathering to avoid spreading the coronavirus. The United States has slapped sanctions on Ming Online as well as other individuals and companies related to Myanmar's military. Officials say the move is to help the people's efforts to secure freedom and democracy. The U.S. Treasury Department said on Thursday that the individuals are 10 current and former military officials. It said they are responsible for the takeover or are associated with the military regime. 3 companies on the sanctions list are owned or controlled by the military or security forces. They deal in jade, rubies, and other gems. U.S. President Joe Biden signed an executive order enabling the sanctions. The targeted individuals and entities will see their assets in the U.S. frozen. They will also be prohibited from doing business with American citizens. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said in a statement that her department is prepared to take additional action if Myanmar's military does not change course. The U.S. Commerce Department said it has restricted the export of sensitive items to Myanmar's security authorities. And that wraps up our bulletin. I'm Tra Chirakosan in Bangkok.
Next in sports, tennis fans will be banned from the Australian Open in Melbourne after the Victoria state government imposed the 5-day coronavirus lockdown. The lockdown started at midnight on Friday, local time. Victoria's Premier announced the measure in response to the discovery of a COVID-19 cluster of the UK variant. The Australian Open's tournament director said the matches will proceed without spectators until lockdown restrictions are lifted. He asked for understanding of the change.
All along in this process, we've said that the #1 priority was going to be the safety of the community, the health of the community, as well as of all of our guests, 1,000 guests from around the world.
The Grand Slam event opened on Monday, 3 weeks behind schedule due to the pandemic. The number of spectators permitted had been cut by about half as an anti-infection measure. Celebrations for the Lunar New Year are taking place through parts of Asia the next few days. Our meteorologist Jonathan Oh has the forecast into the weekend in our World Weather Report.
Hello, we have a large area of high pressure controlling a good portion of the eastern areas of Asia, but we do have this low pressure system down near the southwestern islands of Japan that's helping to really bring in some moisture. We'll be seeing some development along that side of Japan as we go into the first part of next week. Elsewhere, relatively dry weather, at least for the next day or so. Here are some locations celebrating the Lunar New Year in terms of the weekend, and we're looking at rain to pick up in Beijing so by Sunday, and look at the temperatures starting to fall back down as we go into the first part of next week. Meanwhile, we're talking about a frigid blast of winter weather impacting folks all the way down toward Texas, leading to some serious accidents, deadly accidents, and we are looking at more winter weather going through the weekend because of a couple areas of low pressure that's going to be hitting really this cold air and likely bringing winter storm and even ice storm concerns as it moves across. We're going to see highs really dropping off, single-digit highs into places like Atlanta on Saturday with rain to Houston. Look at this, Oklahoma City is going to be below freezing as we go throughout the day on Saturday. Meanwhile, across Europe, we have a low-pressure system moving into the Italian peninsula and another system over the Atlantic, so that's going to bring some cloud cover and some showers through the weekend into places like the United Kingdom. We're only looking at some rain as we go into Saturday, and so, yeah, you're going to need to have your umbrellas nearby. Now, before we go, I want us to take a look at what's happening in Italy by looking at this video. Something very interesting as red-colored sand flown from the Sahara Desert of northern Africa fell on the snow-covered landscapes of the Italian Alps last Saturday. Visitors who participated in a sled ride pulled by huskies last weekend were surprised at the beautiful scene. Now, the sand also covered areas like Barcelona, Lyon, and other areas of Europe, turning the skies there with a tinted red. Interesting enough. Hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are.